Hello and welcome to the India Hangout. Has the anti-corruption movement lost some of its steam? Understandably, there has been a diversion of efforts thanks to the elections and all the campaigning, but the Aam Aadmi Party is contesting in more than 420 seats. That's been taking away some of the energy. But the question to ask is, the anti-corruption movement in theory should go on way beyond elections. So we talked to, we are now joined by Prashant, Bhushan, Supreme Court lawyer. I'm also joined by Ayaz, Memon and Chitra, Subramaniam from Bangalore. The question we are asking really is what lies ahead for the anti-corruption movement in general as well as the Aam Aadmi Party in specific. Mr. Bhushan, thank you very much for joining us this evening. So let me pose the straight question to you first. What lies ahead, and to some extent has there been a diversion of energy thanks to the elections?
Of energy for the elections was necessary for the reason that since just the agitation itself was not yielding the desired results, in the sense that the Jan Lokpal bill was not being brought by these corrupt political parties who were all saying that, look, we are the elected representatives, how can you tell us what kind of a bill? We'll decide what kind of a bill is to be brought, is not to be brought, etc. They were dilly-dallying on the bill. Eventually, they have brought something just close to the elections, which is a farce in the name of the Jan Lokpal bill. And constantly they were taunting us by saying that, look, if you have the guts, you come and defeat us in elections, and then you can talk about the kind of Jan Lokpal bill that is that needs to be passed. And therefore, reluctantly, we were forced to enter the electoral thicket and challenge them in elections, because we realized that these political parties, the mainstream political parties, including the Congress and the BJP, have developed this arrogance that no honest political party or no honest set of people can defeat them in electoral politics, because unless they feel that unless you have this money power, muscle power, and are willing to do this kind of caste politics or this communal politics, etc., you can't win elections. And therefore, eventually, we had to form a political party and challenge them, seeing that there was no way out or there was no way forward except to challenge them, really.
Right. Okay. So let me pick up on two or three key sort of drivers of the whole anti-corruption movement, at least from the legal point of view. So there was the 2G scam, which you spearheaded. There was the abolition of coal mining blocks. And then subsequently you also filed a case in the Goa mining scam. So now many of these things were in a way the manifestations of the larger issue of corruption. Now where do they stand, and where would they, I mean, what's the progress, if you can briefly take us through these three ones which clearly were the sort of faces of the problem that you were fighting against?
You see, those are in court. The 2G prosecutions are going on, investigations are still going on. The CBI is now closing the investigations in some of the people who are very powerful. They, for example, did not charge sheet Anil Ambani in that Swan Telecom matter. They are now planning to let off this Dayanidhi Maran also. The point is that it's not possible really to constantly and for years altogether get this monitored through the Supreme Court, because even in the Supreme Court we don't get to see these status reports or the investigation reports which are filed by the CBI, and unless we can see them, we can't even point out to the court what is the investigation that needs to be done which has not been done, or what is the dishonesty in the investigation that has been done, etc. And that is why we were saying that, look, the CBI, etc., is still controlled by the government. Eventually, it is all controlled by the government. And therefore, we need a totally independent authority, an independent agency called the Lokpal, which is completely independent of the government and which has the power to investigate all these people and prosecute them, and which is also accountable in various ways, which we had set out in the Jan Lokpal bill. But unfortunately, as I said, none of these political parties want to create that kind of independent agency. They have brought a farce in the name of a Lokpal, and there is already bickering about whose political nominees should be appointed as Lokpal, etc. So therefore,
So no, the sense I'm getting, Mr. Bhushan, is between, let's say, the inability of the Lokpal bill to go through in the manner that you sought, and the elections and the electoral challenges that are facing your party, there's really not much bandwidth left for the original cause.
No, the original cause is there, but we realized, you see, this whole process of this movement and the response of the political parties as well as of parliament and the government to this movement showed us that eventually there is common agreement between all the major political parties, all the corrupt political parties, that there should not be a truly independent, robust anti-corruption agency set up in this government. And therefore, that is why they were saying they blatantly disregarded the wishes of the people and the views of crores of people as manifested in this whole Jan Lokpal movement. And they just kept saying that unless you defeat us in elections, why should we bother to listen to you?
Okay, so
and
a lot of
do as we please.
Right, so a lot of questions coming in, Mr. Bhushan. So the first one is, in some ways, an extension of what I've been asking. How will you repower the anti-corruption movement? From Shruti.
No, the anti-corruption movement is an ongoing movement. It goes on in the courts. You see, the action in the courts is part of this anti-corruption movement. The action on the streets, our press conferences, our exposés are part of the anti-corruption movement. It is all part of the anti-corruption movement. But as I said, this anti-corruption movement, whether it is on the streets, whether it is by way of exposés, etc., does not reach the desired conclusion by way of sending these corrupt people to jail, or recovering the corrupt money that they have acquired by these corrupt deals, etc., unless you create the required machinery, which was the machinery which we sought to create through the Jan Lokpal. But these parties, as I said, are not willing to create that required machinery. They are not even willing to make the kind of judicial reforms that are required in order to ensure that these prosecutions are done quickly, credibly and quickly by a judiciary which can be trusted to give out the correct judgments.
So when you say judicial reform in this context, could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, you see, today there are very serious problems with the judicial system in this country, as a result of which there are very few corrupt people, powerful corrupt people who have been brought to book through the judicial system. Eventually, we find that even in cases like the 2G case, where there is a lot of pressure and an eye is kept on this whole process by the Supreme Court, even in such cases, the really powerful people and the well-connected people, they remain in jail, like Raja remained in jail for a year or so, but eventually they all come out on bail, and then the prosecutions go on interminably, or then the prosecutions come to naught because of the witnesses having been bought over, or the prosecution agency not pursuing the case vigorously enough, or sometimes even the trial courts being bought over. So therefore, what we need are very serious judicial reforms by way of firstly ensuring that the people of this country can access the judicial system without the help of lawyers, because 80% people in this country cannot afford lawyers. Secondly, that cases are completed in a time-bound manner. And thirdly, that they are decided by judges who are competent as well as honest. So you need a proper system of judicial appointments, you need a proper system of judicial accountability, you need more judges, you need simpler procedures in the courts to ensure that cases are decided quickly. But unfortunately, again, this is an issue on which none of the mainstream political parties, neither the Congress nor the BJP, are really interested, because those who are in power and are in authority, or those who hope to be an authority who were in authority, do not see the lack of functionality or the dysfunctionality of the judiciary as any kind of impediment for themselves. It's a serious problem for the people of this country, but it's actually a great thing for the people who are in power, who would have been prosecuted and would be in jail had the judiciary been functioning properly.
Right. So, some questions. Ayaz has one. Ayaz.
Yeah, Mr. Bhushan, just from an electoral, the electoral politics point of view, it seems as if the India against corruption, the whole crusade which was started by you and several others, now that seems to be hijacked in a way by the two major parties also. For instance, the BJP has launched into Robert Vadra and the Congress has launched into Adani, and it seems that corruption, while it has become a major theme, is no longer only the Aam Aadmi Party's kind of prerogative.
No, it should not be the Aam Aadmi Party prerogative at all. It should be the widespread concern of everybody. But unfortunately, the BJP and the Congress remember these things only at the time of elections for scoring political points. The BJP as well as Mr. Arun Jaitley had the Vadra papers at least a year before we got them. And for a year he sat on those papers, did nothing. They were using those papers. Similarly, the Congress had the Adani papers at least a year before we had them. Now, both were indulging in mutual blackmail, which means that they were saying, all right, if you expose us, we will expose you, which is what they have been saying even now. When the Congress started making these charges against Mr. Modi or against Adani or regarding Adani, etc., then the BJP's response was this: look, if you do this, if you expose us, we will expose you as well. We can do a lot of things against you as well. So we have been seeing this game of mutual blackmail going on between these parties, as a result of which both these parties, the Congress and the BJP, are very comfortable with having each other in power, because they know that nothing, while the Congress is in power, nothing will be done to top BJP leaders. While the BJP is in power, nothing will be done against top Congress leaders. This is the kind of pact that they have. Right now, they are making noises only for getting some votes, etc. But you can be sure that they are not going to take any serious action, as they have never done in the past.
Right. So, so let me bring you on the same page with Chitra Subramaniam, who's joining us from Bangalore, Mr. Bhushan. You've also written a book on Bofors in 1990, if I recall, called The Selling of the Nation. Chitra, as you know, has been also following up on that story for many years. Chitra, do you have a question or comment towards Mr. Bhushan?
No, I don't have a question or comment on Bofors. For Mr. Bhushan, he has his own views, I have mine. But I'd like to come back to the original question that you asked, if that the anti-corruption movement has lost its wind. If it has lost its wind, I am very glad it has, because you can't sustain something on destruction. I think the point was made, the agitation made its point, now it's time to move on. You cannot get to the bottom of any investigation if you're constantly on the streets or on television channels. A lot of work has to be done very quietly, away from the glare of all kinds of people who have, above all, personal interests and personal agenda. The moment you use the word crusader, what does the crusader do? Where did the word come from? It came from people decimating another people. So this whole notion of crusading and all, I think is quite silly.
Mr. Bhushan, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, you see, it's all right that I agree with Chitra that serious investigation requires a lot of work and so on. But the point is, where does that investigation take us? Does it, the real effective action would be if somebody ends up being prosecuted, somebody ends up going to jail as a result of that investigation, or if the looted money could be recovered, or if that corrupt deal could be reversed. But unfortunately, what we are seeing is, though so many scams have been exposed over so many years, hardly any action takes place, and the only action that takes place is as a result of these Supreme Court monitored investigations in PILs, etc., which I have been doing. For example, in the 2G case, some prosecutions were eventually launched, though, as I said, most of the people are out on bail. Some of the critical people were not charge sheeted due to the political pressure on the CBI, etc. And many of them may eventually get let off by way of acquittals due to various reasons, not for any germane reasons, but for collateral reasons. Similarly, in the Colgate case, some progress has been made. Hopefully, the coal mines will be cancelled. That judgment is still awaited. Some investigation is being done, again, being monitored by the court. But again, dishonestly, we are seeing several preliminary inquiries have been shut down. Several FIRs have been closed. Closure reports have been filed, which ought to have been charge sheeted. But again, we are helpless because we don't get access to these reports. And how long and to what extent can a few people go on pursuing these matters? There are scams every day. Today I was dealing with this Air India scam where this 111 aircrafts worth 67,000 crores have been purchased by Air India for no good reason at all, because they were already flying under capacity, plus they went out and leased a lot of aircraft also, as a result of which a profitable airline has been brought to a situation where it's running losses of more than 5,000 crores annually, almost 10,000 crores annually. So therefore, every day in this country there are scams erupting, mega scams which are erupting. Uh, we try and do whatever we can do to expose them. We try and do whatever we can do to take them to court. Some of them, at any rate, whatever we can handle.
Yeah.
But as I said, the only real solution to this is to have a proper, robust, independent agency to deal with all this. Unfortunately, none of this is being brought. And the reason we have seen again and again, we are being told that unless you defeat us in elections, we are not going to do this. This is the sum and substance of what these political parties are telling us.
So here's another, there's a question and comment from one of the viewers, Mr. Bhushan. These elections have shown that despite all the corruption claims, it does not matter. It's almost a non-issue. No party's fortune seems to have been significantly affected, at least by the claims of corruption.
Yeah, wherever people see or do not feel that they have an option of any non-corrupt political party, corruption becomes a non-issue. Between the Congress and the BJP, corruption is a non-issue, because everybody knows that they are both equally corrupt. They are both equally guilty of crony capitalism in their time. Whenever the BJP has been in power, they have indulged in every kind of corruption scam. When the Congress is in power, it indulges in every kind of corruption scam. Therefore, when the people see, or if the people feel that these are the only two parties who are likely to win because of the kind of sheer enormous advertisement that they are able to do with their thousands of crores of corrupt money that they have with them, and if they feel that the Aam Aadmi Party, while it's a good party of honest people, etc., has no chance of winning in any place, or has very little chance of winning, then they vote for the Congress or the BJP, and then corruption becomes a non-issue. If they feel that Congress is worse than the BJP, they will vote for the BJP. If they feel BJP is worse than the Congress, they will vote for the Congress. They will vote for the Aam Aadmi Party only if and only if they feel that Aam Aadmi Party is also in the race. So wherever
So Mr. Bhushan, one of the constant points here is, and I'm sure you've been asked this on many occasions, because everyone seems to know what Aam Aadmi Party is against, but not what it is for.
No, that's not true. Now, a lot of people know what Aam Aadmi Party is for. Even in the 49 days that it was in the government in Delhi, it did several things to show what it is for. It is for improving the number as well as the quality of government schools to ensure that every child, however poor, particularly the disadvantaged children, are able to get good education. So any amount of funds that are required or needed for improving the quality and quantity of government schools will be spent by the Aam Aadmi Party. Similarly, public health care, government hospitals, any number of hospitals and better quality hospitals to ensure that every person is able to get reasonable health care free of cost or virtually free of cost, that electricity is available at affordable rates, that water is the minimum quantity of water that is necessary for every human being to lead a dignified life is available virtually free of cost. So therefore, we also said that we are opposed to FDI in retail because we felt that it is going to adversely affect a lot of small retailers who are dependent upon for their livelihood on this retail, etc. So all these things were unfolding as to what we were for. In fact, if you look at our manifesto, we have a reasonable manifesto. It's not a very elaborate or a very detailed manifesto. We had prepared position papers on more than 30 issues, which are much more detailed. But our manifesto also contains a fairly good idea of what the Aam Aadmi Party stands for.
So the other question here from Hindol, Mr. Bhushan, is that would you accept today that leaving Delhi was a mistake?
Well, I personally don't think that resigning from the Delhi government was a mistake. We would have had to do that because after we registered these FIRs against Sheila Dikshit as well as the FIR against Ambani and Veerappa Moily in that gas price matter, it became clear that the BJP and the Congress would not allow this government to continue because both the BJP and the Congress are basically pocket burros of Reliance, as is clear from the conversation in the Radia tapes. Now, after that, when we tried to introduce, soon after that, when we tried to introduce the Jan Lokpal bill, which was the first item and the most important item on the Aam Aadmi Party's agenda, both the BJP and the Congress got together to prevent even the introduction of that bill. Then the situation was, if we just continued in government for the sake of remaining in office, we would not have been able to do the real things that our party had been formed to do. We would not have been able to pass the Swaraj bill, which was for decentralized direct democracy at the local level. We were not being allowed to pass the Jan Lokpal bill to provide a permanent solution for corruption in Delhi. And therefore, we thought that it is better now to go for fresh elections and get a full majority so that we are able to do all these things that we had promised in our manifesto. Unfortunately, the Congress and the BJP again got together and have prevented the holding of fresh elections in Delhi, which could have been held by now, as a result of which there could have been and would have been a majority Aam Aadmi Party government which could have implemented all our agenda. But unfortunately, they have both the BJP and the Congress have said that they want president's rule to continue in Delhi and they want to thwart at any cost a democratically elected government in Delhi.
Right. So, Mr. Bhushan, we're going to spin forward. I mean, as we run out of time, I think the question really is what lies ahead and what does the AAP or the broader anti-corruption movement or rather which direction does it go? But before that, Ayaz has a question too.
Govind, I just wanted to supplement what you're saying. This is precisely that you know, a month from now or maybe 3 weeks from now when the results are out, there'll be the euphoria and the drama about the formation of the new government. If in case the Aam Aadmi Party is not a key player in the formation of the government and it will take about 6-8 months for that euphoria to die down or the controversies, the corruption issue will probably take a backseat till then. What is the Aam Aadmi Party's strategy or what is your thought on this? That post May 16th, what happens? I know the Delhi elections are going to come up, so that you'll get involved in that. But at the national level?
Is not the final, this is only the semi-finals.
Okay.
We are going to see another election, a general election in this country within a year or 2 years from now. Because this election is not going to yield any kind of stable government. It's going to yield a hodgepodge situation which is not likely to be stable for very long. And Aam Aadmi Party needs to now pull up its socks, set the party in order, because we have not had enough time to devote to setting the party organizations properly in all the states, etc. We will need to do that. We will need to set up proper robust systems of grievance redressal, ombudsman, and so on. We would need to now start having elections for electing executive people in the party. We would need to also refine our Swaraj. We will use this time to refine our Swaraj bill, to refine our model for judicial reforms, administrative reforms, police reforms, etc. a lot of work needs to be done, and that's what the Aam Aadmi Party would be doing.
Right. Chitra, do you want to come in here? Your sense, I think your point earlier was that, the sense of a crusader is not really gelling for what really is a nuts and bolts, long-term plumbing operation. What in your mind would be the best way to attack this or address this for the movement or the party?
I don't have much to add except that I would urge all the viewers of this program to read Mr. Prashant Bhushan's book on wars. Secondly, I don't believe that attacking an institution or bringing down a government by itself has any meaning. You have to quickly move in and strengthen institutions. You will never have the best cut in the first cut, but you cannot constantly, we've had for the last half an hour all kinds of names, all kinds of issues being thrown out by Mr. Bhushan, most of which we know. So what is the next step? This is what nobody wants to talk about because it involves all of them. That's all I have to say.
Okay. So, Mr. Bhushan, let me add a quick question to that, which has come in from Hindol. He says, while the core idea of the Aam Aadmi Party, participative democracy, remains powerful, there is an increasing suspicion that the leaders of AAP might not be able to deliver that model because the party is still very unprepared with a nominal organization on the ground across the country. So, therefore, what are the concrete steps you are taking to build this organizational or dedicated cadre base?
Yeah, as I said, we really have to do a lot of work on that front. We understand that our party organization is not very robust or strong in many of the states. We need to set up proper systems of grievance redressal, as I said, of electing our representatives. We need to have a proper, clearly defined base of party members, etc., in order to be able to conduct those elections, etc. We need to further work on many of our policy documents. We need to try and at least use the prototypes. In Delhi, if our government had been allowed to continue, if we had been allowed to pass the Jan Lokpal bill here, as well as the Swaraj bill here, we would have been able to see whether there were any problems in the working of this Jan Lokpal or in this decentralized direct democracy, which would have come in the Swaraj bill. And we want to do those in order to be able to, because this is a fairly radical experiment in democracy. Democracy in this country has come to mean only this representative democracy, which means the right to vote once in 5 years, and thereafter for the next 5 years the elected representatives take all the decisions. We want to put in place a radically a deeper kind of democratic system in this country, which would allow the people to participate in actual decision making, even policy making, even law making on occasions. And that is something which needs a lot of work. We need to put in that, but clearly the time to start that process has come in this country. Right. And that's what the Aam Aadmi Party would be trying to do.
Right. So, Mr. Bhushan, last question. I know we've been sort of, meshing the questions on the party and the movement all together. So, what about you? How's your own list of things to do looking for the next year or so?
I will have to still primarily devote my time to the courts, because there are a lot of important public interest cases which are still going on in the courts and which keep coming up, and somebody has to spend time and attention on those as well. Those are important as well. Apart from that, I'll try and devote a little more time to the party now, to the party organization, which I have not really been directly involved with, as well as on refining our own policies. Those are the things.
Right, Mr. Bhushan, thank you very much for joining us and speaking to us and sharing your thoughts on what lies ahead for the anti-corruption movement and answering the question or responding to the question on whether it's run out of steam. Thank you very much, Chitra, as well, and thank you, Ayaz, for joining us. That's all we have time for in the India Hangout. We're going to be back very soon.